Welcome to the 1,000 Nights and One Night. Now, when it was the 435th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the palmer man drank the bitter draught for stress of thirst, he returned and said, I marvel, O ancient dame, at thy choosing to sojourn in this place, and thy putting up with such meat and drink." She asked, "And how is it then in thy country?" Whereto he answered, "In my country are houses, wide and spacious, and fruits ripe and delicious, and waters sweet, and vivens savorous, and of goodly use, with meats fat and full of juice, and flocks and numerous, and all things pleasant, and all the goods of life, the like whereof are not, save in the paradise, which Allah the Omnipotent hath promised to his servants pious." Replied she, "All this have I heard, but tell me, have ye a sultan who ruleth over you, and is tyrannical in his rule, and under whose hands you are? One who, if any of you commit an offence, taketh his goods and ruineth him, who, whenas he will turneth you out of the house and home, and uprooteth you, stock and branch?" Replied the man, "Indeed, that may be." And she rejoined, "If so, by Allah, these your delicious food and life of daintyhood and gifts, however good with tyranny and oppression, are but a searching poison, while our coarse meat, which in freedom and safety we eat, is a healthful medicine. Hast thou not heard that the best of boons, after all Islam, the true faith, are sanity and security? Now such boons, quoth he who telleth the tale, may be by the just rule of the Sultan, vice-regent of Allah on this earth, and the goodness of his policy. The Sultan of time past needed but little awfulness, for when the lieges saw him they feared him. But the Sultan of these days hath need of the most accomplished polity and the utmost majesty, because men are not as men of bygone time, and this our age is one of folk opprobrious, and is greatly calamitous, noted for folly and hardness of heart, and inclined to hate and enmity. If therefore the Sultan, which Almighty Allah forfend, be weak or wanting in polity and majesty, this will be the assured cause of his country's ruin." Quoth the proverb, "An 100 years of the Sultan's tyranny, but not 1 year of the people's tyranny over one another. When the lieges oppress one another, Allah setteth over them a tyrannical sultan and a terrible king. Thus, it is told in history that one day there was sent to Al-Hajj bin Yusuf a slip of paper whereon was written, 'Fear Allah and oppress not his servants with all manner of oppression.' When he read this, he mounted the pulpit, for he was eloquent and ever ready of speech, and said, 'O folk, Allah Almighty hath made me ruler over you by reason of your frowardness.'" And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 436th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Hajjaj Yusuf's son read the paper, he mounted the pulpit and said, 'O folk, Allah Almighty hath made me ruler over you by reason of your frowardness, and indeed, though I die, yet will ye not be delivered from oppression with these your ill deeds, for the Almighty hath created like unto me many an one. If it be not I, 'twill be one more mischievous than I, and a mightier in oppression, and a more merciless in his majesty, even as saith the poet. For not indeed the hand can try, save neath the hand of God on high, nor tyrant harsh work tyranny, uncrushed by tyrant harsh is he. Tyranny is feared, but justice is the best of all things. We beg Allah to better our case, and among tales is that of Abu Al-Husn and his slave girl Tawaddud. There was once in Baghdad a man of consequence and rich in moneys and immovables, who was one of the chiefs of the merchants, and Allah had largely endowed him with worldly goods, but had not vouchsafed him what he longed for or offspring. And there passed over him a long space of time without his blessed with issue, male or female. His years waxed great, His bones became wasted, and his back bent. Weakness and weariness grew upon him, and he feared the loss of his wealth and possessions, seeing he had no child, whom he might make his heir, and by whom his name shall be remembered. So he betook himself with supplication to Almighty Allah, fasting by day and praying through the night. Moreover, he vowed many vows to the living, the eternal, and visited the pious, and was constant in supplication to the Most Highest, till he gave ear to him, and accepted his prayer, and took pity on his straining and complaining, so that before many days were past, he knew carnally one of his women, whom conceived by him that same night. In due time she finished her months, and casting her burden, bore a male child, as it were a slice of the moon. Whereupon the merchant fulfilled his vows and his gratitude to Allah, to whom be honor and glory, and gave alms and clothed the widows and the orphan. On the 7th night after the boy's birth, he named him Abu Al-Husn, and the wet nurses suckled him, and the dry nurses dandled him, and the servants and the slaves carried him and handled him, till he shot up and grew tall, and throve greatly, and learned the sublime Quran, and the ordinances of all Islam, and the canons of the true faith, and calligraphy, and poetry, and mathematics, and archery. And on this wise he became the union pearl of his age, and the goodliest of the folk of his time, fair of face, and of tongue fluent, carrying himself with a light and graceful gait, and glorying in his stature, proportionate and amorous graces, which were to many a bait. And his cheeks were red, and flower white was his forehead, and his side face waxed brown, with tender down, even as saith one describing him, the spring of the down on the cheeks right clearly shows, and how when the spring is gone shall the last the rose? Dost thou not see that the growth upon his cheek is violet bloom that from its leaves outgrows? He abode a while in ease and happiness with his father, who rejoiced and delighted in him, till he came to a man's estate, when the merchants one day made him sit down before him, and he said, O my son, the appointed term draweth near, my hour of death is at hand, and it remaineth but to meet Allah, to whom belong majesty and might. I leave thee what shall suffice thee, even to thy son's son, of monies and mansions, farms and gardens. Wherefore fear thou Almighty Allah, O my son, in dealing with that which I bequeath thee, and follow none but those who will help thee to the divine favor. Not long after, he sickened and died. So the son ordered his funeral, after the goodliest wise, and burying him returned to his house, and sat mourning for many days and nights. But behold, certain of his friends came in to him, and said to him, Whoso leaveth a son like thee is not dead. Indeed, what is past, and fled, and mourning beseemeth none but the young maid and the wife cloistered. And they ceased not from him till they wrought on him to enter the Hammam and break off his mourning. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 437th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Abu Al-Husn was visited by his friends, and taken to the Hammam, and proceeded to break off his mourning, he presently forgot his father's charge, and his head was turned by his riches. He thought fortune would always wound with him as it was, and that wealth would ever wax and never wane. So he ate and he drank and he made merry, and he took his pleasure, and gave gifts of gear and coin, and was profuse with gold, and addressed himself up to eating fowls, and breaking the seals of wine flasks, and listening to the giggle of the daughter of the vine as she gurgled from the flagon, and enjoying the jingle of the singing girls. Nor did he give over his way of life till his wealth was wasted, and the case worsened, and all his goods went from him, and he bit his hands in bitter penitence. For of a truth, he had nothing left, after that which he had squandered, but a concubine, a slave girl, whom his father had bequeathed to him with the rest of his estate. And she had no equal in beauty and loveliness and brightness and liveliness and symmetric stature and perfect grace. She was past mistress in every manner of arts, and accomplished and endowed with many excellencies, surpassing all the folk of her age and time. She was grown more notorious than a waymark for her seductive genius, and outdid the fair both in theory and practice. And she was noted for her swimming gait, flexile and delicate, albeit she was full 5 feet in height, and by all the boons of fortune decked and dight with straight arched brows twain, as they were with the crescent moons of Sha'aban, and the eyes like gazelle's eyne, and nose like the edge of a scimitar fine, and cheeks like anemones of blood-red shine, and mouth like Solomon's seal and sign, and teeth like necklaces of pearls and line, and navel holding an ounce of oil of benzoin, and waist more slender than his body, whom love hath wasted, and whom concealment hath made sick with pine in hind parts, heavier than 2 hills of sand. Briefly, she was a volume of charms, after saying who saith, her fair shape ravisheth, if face to face she did appear, and if she turn for severance from her, she slayeth sheer. Sun-like, full moon-like, sapling-like, unto her character estrangement no wise appertains, nor cruelty austere. Under the bosom of her shaft she garths of Eden are, and the full moon revolveth still around her neck rings sphere. She seemed a full moon rising, and a gazelle browsing, a girl of 9 plus 5, shaming the moon and sun, even as saith the Versayer, eloquent and ingenious. Semblance of full moon heaven bore, when 5 and 5 are conjoined by 4. 'Tis not my sin if she made of me its like when it riseth horizon o'er. Clean of skin, odoriferous of breath, it seemed as if she were of fire fashioned and of crystal moulded. Rose red was the cheek of her, and the perfect the shape and form of her, even as one saith her, describing her. Scented with sandal and musk, right proudly doth she go, with gold and silver and rose and saffron color aglow. A flower in a garden she is, a pearl in an ounce of gold, or an image in chapel set for worship of high and low. Slender and shapely she is. Vivacity bids her rise, but the weight of her hip says, sit, or softly and slowly go. When as her favors I seek and sue for my heart's desire, be gracious, her beauty says, but her coquetry answers no. Glory to him who made beauty her portion, and that of her lover to be of the prat of the censure's high-ho. She captivated all who saw her with the excellence of her beauty and the sweetness of her smile, and shot down the shafts she launched from her eyes. Withal she was eloquent of speech and excellently skilled in verse. Now, when Abu Al-Husn had squandered all his gold, and his ill plight all could behold, and there remained to him naught, save this slave girl, he abode 3 days without tasting meat or taking rest and sleep, and the handmaid said to him, O my lord, carry me to the commander of the faithful, Harun al-Rashid. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 438th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that quoth the slave girl to her master, O my lord, carry me to Harun al-Rashid, 5th of the sons of Abbas, and seek of him to my price 10,000 dinars. If he deem me dear, say to him, O prince of the true believers, my handmaid is worth more than this. Do but prove her, and her value will be magnified in thine eyes, for this slave girl hath not her equal, and she were unfit to any but thou. And she added, Beware, O my lord, of selling me at less than the sum I have named. Indeed, 'tis but little for the like of me. Now her owner knew not her worth, nor that she had no equal in her day, but he carried her to the caliph, and set her in the presence, and repeated what she had bidden him to say. The caliph asked her, What is thy name? To which she answered, My name is Tawaddud. He then inquired, O Tawaddud, in what branches of knowledge dost thou excel? And she replied, O my lord, I am versed in syntax and poetry, jurisprudence and exegesis, and philosophy, and I am skilled in music and the knowledge of the divine ordinances, and in arithmetic and geodesy and geometry and the fables of the ancients. I know the sublime Koran by heart, and have read it according to the 7, the 10, and the 14 modes. I know the number of its chapters and versets and sections and words, and its halves and fourths and eighths and tenths, the number of prostrations which occur in it, and the sum total of its letters. And I know what there is in it of abrogating and abrogated, also what parts of it revealed al-Medina, and what at Mecca, and the cause of the different revelations. I know the holy traditions of the apostles, saying historical and legendary. They establish in those whose inscription is doubtful. And I have studied the exact sciences, geometry, philosophy, medicine, logic and rhetoric and composition. And I have learnt many things by rote, and am passionately fond of poetry. I can play the lute, and I know its gamut and notes and notations, and the crescendo and the demento. If I sing and dance, I seduce, and if I dress and set myself, I slay. In fine, I have reached a pitch of perfection, such as can be estimated only by those of them who are firmly rooted in knowledge. Now, when the Caliph heard these words spoken by one so young, he wondered at her eloquence, and turning to Abu Al-Husn said, I will summon those who shall discuss with her all she claimeth to know. If she answer correctly, I will give thee the price thou asked for her, and more. And if not, thou art fitter to have her than I. With gladness and goodly gree, O Commander of the Faithful, replied Abu Al-Husn. So the Caliph wrote to the Viceroy of Basra to send him Ibrahim bin Sayyar, the prosist, who was the first man of his day in argument and eloquence and poetry and logic, and bade him bring with him readers of the Koran, and learned doctors of the law, and physicians, and astrologers, and scientists, and mathematicians, and philosophers, and Ibrahim was more learned than all. In a little while they arrived at the palace of the Caliphate, knowing not what was to do, and the Caliph sent for them to his sitting chamber, and ordered them to be seated. So they sat down, and he bade bring the damsel Tawaddud, who came, and unveiling, showed herself as she were, a sparkling star. The Caliph set her a stool of gold, and she saluted, and speaking with an eloquent tongue, said, O Commander of the Faithful, bid the Olema, and the doctors of law, and the leeches, and the astrologers, and scientists, and mathematicians, and all here present, contend with me in argument. So he said to them, I desire of you that you dispute with this damsel on the things of her faith, and stultify her argument in all she advanceth. And they answered, saying, We hear and obey Allah and thee, O Commander of the Faithful. Upon this, Tawaddud bowed her head and said, Which of you is the doctor of the law, the scholar versed in the readings of the Koran and in the traditions? Quoth one of them, I am the man who thou seekest. Quoth she, Then ask me what thou wilt. Said the doctor, Hast thou read the precious book of Allah, and dost thou know its cancelling and cancelled parts? And hast thou meditated its versets and its letters? Yes, answered she. Then said he, I will proceed to question thee of the obligations and the immutable ordinances. So tell me of these, O damsel, and who is thy Lord, who thy prophet, and who thy guide? What is thy point of fronting and prayer, and who be thy brethren? Also, what thy spiritual path, and what thy highways? Whereto she replied, Allah is my Lord, and Mohammed, whom Allah save and is sane, my prophet, and the Quran is my guide, and the Kaaba my fronting, and the true believers are my brethren. The practice of good is my path, and the Sunnah my highway. The Caliph again marveled at her words, so eloquently spoken by one so young, and the doctor pursued, O damsel, with what do we know Almighty Allah? She said. With the understanding, said he. And what is the understanding? Quoth she, It is of two kinds, natural and acquired. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease my tales for the day, till it be morrow.